Yeah, so welcome everybody to the OLLI Brown Bag presentation. Today we have a special guest. But before we get started, I do want to acknowledge that Cal Poly Humboldt is on the ancestral land of the Wiyot people, as well as people from the Brown River Rancheria and the Blue Lake Rancheria. Arcata also has native place names and a lot of history on the land, and it's important that even beyond this acknowledgement, that we go ahead and build partnerships with our native neighbors and learn from them and just honor that their culture and history is important as well. So welcome everybody to the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, where learning should never end. This is a picture from one of the recent field trip classes that we offered. So just a reminder, we are getting back into in-person classes. So keep an eye on that as our session or our semester ends. I wanted to share that our membership numbers are up from last year by a few. We are so excited because that means that we get to offer more classes and more, just more community. So as a reminder, our spring semester ends on June 30th. So if you're considering being a member, I recommend maybe waiting for the July to come around so you can get that whole year membership. Also, these are some upcoming OLLI Spring classes. We have Jerry Rhodey for April 23rd and on the May 21st class. I kind of want to highlight the Explorando Culturas con Isabel Allende, which is an author who writes amazing books. And the instructor for this class is a Chilean lady that goes by the name of OLLI Galvez-Hard. And I was meeting with her on Saturday and it sounds like it's going to be a really good class. So I'm going to plug that one. I want to thank our friends of OLLI for making these brown bag presentations possible. It's your contributions and your support that make these a low cost resource for the community. So thank you. And I also want to thank our volunteers. They really support us in making sure that we keep our classes relevant, and they also help set up classes when we need them, and they just, they're really good group of people. If anybody else is interested in being a volunteer, you can email us at olli@humboldt.edu. Before we get started, I want to address some questions. You can either put them in the chat or raise your hand if they're really pressing during the presentation, but there will be time for a Q&A afterwards. So all questions can be held to the end, or if they're really pressing, you can go ahead and put them in the chat. But other than that, I'm going to hand it off to Jane so they can introduce our presenter today. And you're muted, Jane.
Okay, sorry about that. I did that to myself a little earlier. Anyway, I'm delighted to welcome you all and to welcome Karen, who is a Humboldt State University graduate, master's. Oh, you know what I just did? Oh, there it is. With a master's in academic research and psychology. She was born in San Diego and is a daughter of Mexican immigrants. In her education and work, she has been especially interested in working within her own community, which is the Southern Indigenous Latinx, in the fields of education, immigrant rights, food sovereignty, and gender violence. And I believe Karen is going to introduce the executive director of, and I'll pass it over to Karen to take it from here. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm really excited to see you all and see so many faces. I want to introduce you all to my partner in crime, my sister, Brenda Perez, our executive director for Centro del Pueblo, and just an overall great leader. Brenda comes from Puebla, Mexico, and is coming into this space to kind of help me talk a little about the stuff that we have been working on during the pandemic, specifically within our Southern Indigenous and Latinx community. We're really excited to be here. Brenda, do you want to say some words?
Thank you, Karen. Hola a todos. Hello, everybody. I just want to thank Karen for putting together this presentation, for the work great work she's doing and extend an acknowledgement to all the immigrants that have forged this land. Thank you very much.
Awesome. With that, we're going to go ahead and start our presentation. I'm going to share my screen. I do have some questions towards the end, and I'm hoping that y'all can put anything that you're interested or super interested in the chat. So let me see. Awesome. So our presentation is going to be on the effects of the pandemic of our Southern Indigenous immigrants in rural Humboldt. And here's our purpose statement. We're an immigrants' rights organization that is for the empowerment of our Southern Indigenous and Latinx community. And we are here to talk about community. We're here to talk about political and cultural self-determination. We are revitalizing our roots and really just knowing our rights as immigrants to this country. So I know that we all know about the pandemic. We've all kind of gone through it and you're probably tired of hearing it, but I do want to bring in a couple of the things that we have been working in within the community and also just giving you a different perspective. This perspective lies from the Southern Indigenous community here in Humboldt County. And what they have been going through the pandemic, right? I think a lot of us are used to being indoors. We're tired of masks, we're tired of everything. But just to recap a little bit, I'm going to give you a little bit of a timeline of the pandemic as it started in December 12, 2019, when in Wuhan there was people with symptoms of the coronavirus. And then in January 20th, it was confirmed that it was the first COVID case. In January 21, then the CDC starts activating an emergency response towards this pandemic or towards this virus. And it wasn't until January 31st where it starts being declared a public emergency. March 13, Donald Trump declares a national-wide emergency. And it wasn't until March 15th that we start seeing the beginnings of what became a global pandemic and the shutdown of the economy and all businesses as well. So during the pandemic, the Latinx Southern Indigenous community was one of the most affected, as you can see here in this chart from UC Berkeley. A lot of us were working during the pandemic, and so that made us, we were the frontline workers, the essential jobs that were being done. And because of this, there was an increased exposure for our people, and that comes with a lot of sicknesses, a lot of difficulties and economic situations, as well as we see here on this corner, unfortunately some deaths as well. And so the reason why I'm here to talk to you about is why we were disproportionately affected and why does this affect our immigrant community the most. As we all know, a lot of the census has now been starting to create a lot of division between whether you can be represented if you're an immigrant or not. And so during the Trump era, there was a big fear during the census to actually go in and report yourself as give yourself information. And so a lot of what we are finding in data is also not really fully being represented due to the fear tactics that have been created in the past administration to then our community now. And so a lot of what we are now listening and hearing to is stuff that was happening and we were not aware of. So during this time and during the pandemic, there was a lot of lack of access for unemployment, and that forced a lot of our community to really go forward and start considering, getting different jobs, multiple jobs, and still exposing our families. A lot of individuals who had difficulties with or who had high risk towards the towards the virus, a lot of individuals were then left at home while other people were forced to be up front and then take over. A lot of these were students, a lot of folks who felt that they were a little bit in a better position to go to work. And even though that there was this push towards, helping out the family and being there for the family, they were still getting a lot of exposure out in these jobs, as well as a lot of increased pressure and a lot of change in dynamics in family systems. There was also a lot of lack of access to healthcare, which once people were then exposed to COVID and then went through the pandemic and got the virus, that means that their bills were not, they came back with huge medical bills. This was a big problem for a lot of folks, and it continues to be an issue today. There was also not a lot of assistance, such as unemployment and stimulus checks that were directed to our community, and therefore a lot of individuals were still in a worse position financially. Many of us have been working day to day, and so even as we're working day to day and we're being exposed, 1 week or 2 weeks of quarantine became a huge fatality in our economic status. And there was also a lot of difficulties accessing information. This was something that occurred for a lot of people and a lot of different populations. However, the thing that happened was once we started realizing there was a lot of misinformation, people started then putting censors on different social media platforms. Unfortunately, this was done to a lot of English platforms, and therefore individuals who were in platforms that were for Spanish speakers or different languages were then still exposed to this misinformation, and there was still a lot of insecurity about this. Unfortunately, and I say this with a really heavy heart, it wasn't until we started seeing the people be truly affected by COVID and people end up in hospitalization or passing away that individuals started seeing that it was still there, but even then it was almost too late to really realize. And so for this reason, the vaccination campaign was huge for us in our community, and making sure that we had access to information in our languages. There was also a lot of racism and discrimination in hospitals, work and jobs. Individuals tell us stories of being having COVID and having no assistance because everybody was scared to even approach the room or approach the house, not knowing really what COVID was or how you could get exposed. And so a lot of lack of support was done. People with hardly any food, any water, and just basic things that they needed to survive during a time where they were in truly need. There was a lot of discrimination in hospitals. Individuals who report going to hospitals and being, one, charged extra for things, two, they were completely dismissed or just left outside of the hospital without even being let in. There was also a lot of difficulty within accessing any type of resources. Individuals who did try to go into resources were often dismissed or not even given the opportunity to apply to resources or think about or consider talking about things that could support them. There was also a lot of difficulty in funerary costs. A lot of individuals saw their families in really difficult situations, trying to, keep their customs and bring their bodies back to their land. And so this was something that was extremely difficult to see and really hard to experience for a lot of families and a lot of frontline workers who did get to see a lot of this. And so overall, there was a big lack of access and resources. This includes language, lack of access of technology, computer literacy. In our geography, we're also in a very rural area. And so even as things are coming up, we were the last ones to kind of get anything or any type of assistance, such as masks, such as hand sanitizers. There was also a lot of fear tactics. And so often I think one of our things that we least consider is having an ID at all times with us. We see it as something that's super easy to just kind of show and flash anywhere, but for our immigrant population, this can be really difficult to have. And so if you are asked at a Food for People event to give your ID in order to obtain food, often you don't have an ID, this can be a really difficult thing to access that resource now. And so now you're forced to pretty much starve or keep looking for food, or end up a lot of the times in houseless situations. As well as the public charge was one of those fear tactics. A lot of individuals were really scared to look into getting EBT or getting any type of assistance that was economical of any sort to pay their rent, because they were scared that this would then affect their chance at applying for a legal status here in this country. So some of the things that kind of were brought in assistances were this of the moratorium that kind of protected a lot of tenants in renting positions to be able to not be evicted while they were struggling to pay their rent. And another one of these ones was the Housing is Key application that I hope many of us heard about. This application was all for the state of California. And so this was something that was that people started applying to in order to try to maintain and support each other and their rent. However, there was still a lot of difficulties within that. This including a lot of lack of access to knowing their landlords. A lot of folks were subletting or lack of access to their contract, lack of access to technology or knowing how to navigate an electronic application, which was something that when it first started, it was all done electronically. There was also a lot of difficulty with individuals just being able to obtain the documents that they needed. If a lot of them had not been working for a while, then it becomes really difficult to turn in that pay stub and things like that. Or if they're getting paid cash, that is also another difficulty and barrier. The COVID testing and the vaccine was also something that initially was really difficult to get people on board. And then when folks were on board, it was really difficult to get individuals to sign up for one because of that electronic, technology barrier, or the language stuff came in until afterwards, as well as funerary costs. That was something that the Consulate of Mexico was also giving funerary costs, but it was very much you had to pay up front and then they would kind of recover and give you money afterwards. So individuals who didn't have the money to put up front were in a really tough position. Now I'm going to let Brenda talk a little bit about the creative solutions that we had for undocumented communities in rural California.
Gracias, Karen. I'm just going to point out some process of the early assistance that Centro del Pueblo was doing, and I'm going to let Karen develop more of those details. The creative solutions came up because we didn't have locally a system to reach out the immigrant, the Latinx community, especially the undocumented community. And the story of ICE interventions in this area has been very traumatic. Therefore, also the community or this sector of population, it is not used to register themselves in any census or participate actively in any program of the local government. Therefore, there was this division, this separation that Centro del Pueblo tried to put together to bridge and to support in this crisis. Some of the solutions we found was food distribution, but always with our own diet, always trying to accomplish the best food for our people. We also have some programs online for the first time. Centro was doing programs with the access to technology and also having some supporting families that were not used to use this type of technology. We also have information in our own languages and visits. Next slide, please. Some of the success of Centro to reach out this community, it's because we did a very extensive field work and interview system to know every case in particular. In the background, you can see an example of the intakes we do. We have phone calls from 15 minutes to an hour to listen every person, to give them more time or support or patience. And then we analyze this information in a database that allowed us to just bring the best to those in need. Since 2020, we are developing this research and this analyze. What we found in the early effects, it's obviously an unemployment, infections in those that kept working. The rent and the food were the two biggest needs on terms of payments. And next, please. One of the creative solutions I'm very proud to present is the sanctuary gardens, or those gardens where immigrants are welcome. For me, it is biggest joy and the biggest sign of pride that see corn plant in our sanctuary gardens. This is a plant that has migrated with us. Wherever we go, we plant our corn for our tortillas and our food. And it's been also a very interesting process because we have been developing more intensive relationships with agencies in places like Fortuna that have most of the last presence of ICE and have some type of conflicts with the local police. So what we want is to bring a message of a peaceful collaboration, a peaceful relationship, that it is possible if we create these projects. While Karen was talking, I was just thinking about the timeline of the region. And if you can see in the background of Fortuna, 2017 was the biggest last task operation of ICE in collaboration with the sheriff's office. And then in 2018, the sanctuary law come into place in Humboldt County. In 2020, then the state of emergency is declared. So we are in a very recent development of files of effects. It wasn't the sanctuary law wasn't to declare too early when then we face a pandemic. Next, please. And for present more details of the assistance locally, here is Karen. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. So a lot of the resources that ended up coming, because they weren't coming from state or a lot of different areas where we were needing them, what we ended up doing is we ended up really advocating for our community and creating things that would then support us. So as Brenda mentioned, a lot of the after looking at a lot of these intakes and looking at the information and analyzing the data, we realized that rent relief was one of the most needed things in our community. And in 2020 to 2021, we did our first rent relief assistance. And so what we ended up doing is we would support families with a check of $500 to give to their rent. This, of course, was minimal help, as we all know that rent keeps going up. But it was something that did help a lot of individuals during a time of need. A lot of the individuals that received this check were people who had been in quarantine, people who had been infected by COVID, or even had COVID scares. A lot of our jobs at the time were, if you had symptoms of COVID, you had to take a quarantine space, and regardless of whether you had COVID or not. And so this became something that was financially a burden for a lot of folks. We also did in 2020 to 2022, 21 to 22, we did our our CDP's winter drive. And so y'all can see a picture here of us in front of the Buen Gusto in Fortuna, California. And you can see us here packaging some of the stuff. Here's where we were able to kind of collect a lot of boxes with food that was culturally appropriate for our community. A lot of folks were going into pantries and not knowing what to do with a lot of like things like split peas or kale, things that normally would be really good and healthy, but if you don't know how to cook them, they can be really difficult. We also made sure that these boxes included things that were easy to cook for people who were in the time of quarantine or sick with COVID and we also made sure that these boxes had a lot of information. So this information includes kind of like some of the stuff that we pointed out earlier, but on top of this information, we also did radio in Spanish and Mixteco. Here you can see one of our community leaders, Julia Nájera, who is our teacher in Mixteco. Mixteco is one of our indigenous languages from Oaxaca. And so what a lot of the stuff she went in and supported in translation, making sure that individuals had access to information on COVID in their own languages as they're coming into these spaces. And as well as we did a lot of information in COVID, a lot of hand sanitizers, mass distributions. Those were also included in the boxes. And you can see here, we worked with DHHS, the Department of Health and Human Services, to ensure that we could provide information that was scientifically sound for our community, and also ensured that they provided us with things that for our community, such as PPE, as you can see, hand sanitizers, a lot of information on vaccination clinics, a lot of information on testing. Our job during this last couple of years has been to really be up to the foot of like knowing everything around COVID so that we can then inform our community as well. We've also done a lot of translation, access to resources, technology assistance with the applications such as Housing is Key, and a lot of assistance with applications. We've also done encuentros, which are gatherings in which the community comes in to discuss certain topics that are really prominent at the time. Some of these have been around things such as, COVID and migration. Some of these have been around rent and rent relief. What are individuals needing? Specifically for a rent relief system, when we created this support, we were given the funds and we made sure that individuals didn't have to go through extra barriers to obtain what they needed. And so for this, we made a gathering to kind of see what were people's difficulties and things, and then created a system in which individuals could apply to our applications without having to not be able to apply to applications due to not having a contract, for example. And also by doing this, we did inform individuals of their rights, such as what the importance of having a contract and not just, stacking it away and not having it anywhere accessible, specifically during a time where they needed to know the rules and whether people could add more rent to it, or just being informed about what the contract meant and said. And a lot of what we did was also emotional support. Brenda mentions with the intakes, we did a lot of 15 to an hour conversation. That hour conversation was because we were supporting people in their needs. The pandemic really isolated a lot of us. And so because of this fear to going outside, we often kind of brought each other back in and were really introverted. And then that pain and things that was coming in were also being taken inwards. So as soon as we did give a call, a lot of people were really easily would open up about their issues and what was going on. So that's where a lot of the emotional support we provided. And we did a lot of outreach, like I mentioned, through radio, tabling, social media, phone banking, events, and just everywhere.
So where we are, because we are not isolated and everybody can support in some way, and everybody's have an impact in our lives, and we in the lives of the rest. So what do we have since the vaccination, or since the vaccine appears, and the central efforts have been very punctual on that, and I will let Karen to talk more about that. But where we are, it's that we can see the impacts here in the number of deaths by vaccination status. So the people that is not fully vaccinated, it is more susceptible to die instead of the fully vaccinated people. And then in the next slide, what we have is the Latinx being the 61% of the population that has been fully vaccinated. So these efforts to have access to the vaccine, or more like, even if we have access to the vaccine, but the efforts of Centro have been focused on provide the level of trust with institutions, on provide the level of trust on this vaccination process. For some of us, it could be very obvious just to go and receive the vaccine. But for most of our community members, it has been a lot of hesitation. It has been, most of this process have been traumatic because of forcing vaccination and some other issues, or forcing vaccination at the borderline. Some other hesitancy has been because of the information that they think they should provide, even if this is a process that is very easy. There wasn't information about it. There wasn't any details. So Centro has been providing that, the detail of the process, so that people feel trust and vaccinate. Even if we compare the African American percentage of population in Humboldt County, and we see the graphic, we see that we still have a lot of things to do, because the Latino population is the second group in demographic importance. And even though we are still in the 61%, our goal is to have the fully vaccinated Latino population, or at least 90%, so that we can know that we are not vulnerable and exposed. Next, please. And again, we are in a moment of uncertainty, because even if the state is declaring no more masks, or we are going to pass to the post-pandemic, we can see only in February how the Omicron variant affected highly the number of cases here locally. And therefore, what is, as we have been explaining, what is the most affected population is the frontline people, the essential workers, are those that are not working at home, and are those that are being infected and dying. So this is an example of how COVID have been affecting people, having the confirmed cases. Here we have to take in count those people that are not vaccinated versus the ones that are vaccinated. But I just want you to remember this graphic, just that we don't forget that the pandemic is on, and we should provide the most support so the people that is not vaccinated get the vaccine. The people that is not vaccinated still uses a mask, that we have that level of consciousness about who are we impacting when we don't take care of ourselves in this context. Next, please. What can you do to help? And here is Karen Villa, who is also going to explain the efforts, more details efforts for vaccination. And I'm very also proud to say that Humboldt County is part of the vacciners, this group of organizations that Karen is going to mention, that is around the United States, working, having these campaigns for people to access the vaccine. Take it on, Karen.
Gracias, Brenda. Yes, so a lot of a lot of what you can do as people who are here in this county is just supporting our local organizations such as Centro del Pueblo. I've included here our website, sedepueblo.com, and you can donate, you can volunteer, all of it is welcomed. We are in big need of having allies, and we're in big need of having individuals to advocate for us. We are currently working with an organization that is working with all over California and I think Montana as well. And what we're doing is we're doing a vaccine coalition where all of us are kind of really working on getting that outreach out for individuals all the way from South Tijuana all the way up to as far as we are up here up north, and then a couple areas as well in, like I mentioned, in Montana. And so what we are working towards is really just getting people informed about the vaccine. They are supporting us with the ads that we're providing in Facebook, and really just being able to get individuals informed on what it is, signing up individuals to get vaccinated for the first, second, and now third booster, and really just being able to have everybody informed and easy access to vaccines. It has become something as simple as calling our phone number to really get a vaccine appointment, and then being able to just show up to the appointment. And so we're really big on making sure that individuals know that they have access to the vaccine and testing regardless of their immigration status. That is something that is really big. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of fear tactics. And so individuals are kind of afraid to go into official or official looking spaces, such as a hospital or anything else like any testing centers and things like that. And so that is something that we make sure that we provide. And so thank you. Brenda, ¿quieres mencionar algo más?
Podemos hacer las preguntas. No sé si las tenía listas. Gracias, Karen.
So now I have, well, we'll have a section for kind of questions and comments, and then we have some questions for you all as well. We know that this is a space of learning, and so we want to make sure that we can be more engaged in our learning. And so, but first, I did want to address that there was a question in the chat. Jane mentioned, what do you consider to be the lessons learned from this pandemic experience in terms of how are these problems can be addressed in the future? Jane, that's a really loaded question. I think a lot of what we learned was truly, there was a lot of gaps in our resources and within the state, within the city, within the county overall. And so there is still a lot of work to be done. This is, like I mentioned, with our government resources, but also with things such as, hospitals, clinics, just there's a lot of gaps. And I would be able to do a whole class on it if I really wanted to. But
that is actually what I would encourage you to do, is basically put together a policy proposal identifying what the problems are, and clearly we know a lot of them, and then what would be needed to be done to address them, not only locally, but I mean statewide, policy wise, because a lot of these issues, I mean, everybody knows the essential workers got creamed. A lot of people don't know much about the immigrant issues, or the undocumented issues, and how they were able to handle it or not, and how to address the fear and the misinformation. I mean, we need to have a policy platform for dealing with this, and then deal with it politically when it comes to the election. Okay, here's what we think we need. Can you deal with that statewide as well as countywide? I mean, we have citywide.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jane. Yeah, definitely. I agree. I also think the biggest thing that we can do, I can see what you're saying, and I think it's a lot of work.
It is.
The easiest thing that I can think of is honestly being able to invite people into those spaces, and being able to have consultations and being able to support people financially in that space. Unfortunately, I think as community organizers, and Brenda can attest to this because Brenda's done this for so long, a lot more than I have, but we're often really overworked and we're often really overstretched. And so being able to have this knowledge also comes with a lot of pain, but it also comes with a lot of sacrifices that we have to do. And so I encourage people to, if you have spaces or you're organizing specifically in politics or in different areas, and you want to have somebody consult for you, make sure that they're supported financially, because we're all struggling and we're all kind of trying to do our best to sustain. I can say as a first generation college student, for me, it's been really difficult to just obtain my education. And so to be able to give into a space where I then have to sacrifice a lot of my financials to be able to support my community can be really difficult. But Brenda, did you have anything else that you wanted to add to this question?
Yes, thank you, Karen. You know, one of the biggest lessons I learned is that there won't be enough grants or economic relief or any other type of support that can cover this size of a crisis, like this huge impact. I think when we started hearing about the pandemic early in 2020, we didn't know what this was, what we were facing. And then 2 years later, I think the real deep solution could be to provide path to citizenship to so many that are undocumented. And for doing this, the immigration system needs to be reformed, of course, because one of the first obstacles for having this access is the fees. I mean, for a family, just to put an example, and it's a rough example, a family needs to save thousands of dollars just to access this path. And it's not about willingness, it's not about learning English, it's more about the financial fees of the immigration system. That's the largest barrier. So unless we don't provide a more comprehensive, a more flexible immigration system, call it pandemic, call it any other crisis, we are going to be always in the bottom and being in the front lines. And any other support, it could be accessory. That I think that's the biggest lesson I experienced, and I also observed with a microscope while doing this job. Thank you.
Thanks for responding. I think many times, since it's very difficult to move things through Congress on this, and they've been trying for years, perhaps you might focus on what you can do locally. I don't know if you're working with Cooperation Humboldt at all, are you? I thought you were, yeah. But to the extent you can get things addressed locally, at least it's an area where you can apply some political influence. So the more you can do that with our local board of supervisors, with our local cities, that makes a lot of sense. It's within reach and where you can actually possibly have an immediate impact versus maybe taking years and years to get something through Congress. Even through the state legislature, that can be challenging. So I wish you luck. I think this was very helpful to understand some of the issues you've been facing, because they certainly really haven't hit the media locally, like the local papers and things like that. So you might try to consider having people write press releases, articles about what's going on, how people were affected, what the issues are. To the extent you can do that and raise public awareness, you can probably get more support. Anyway, any other questions from anybody?
Thank you, Jane. I think Peggy has her hand raised up. Hi, Peggy. How are you?
Hi. I just want to be aware together with everyone about how hard, I want to get rid of my little hand thing. Oh, it's gone. Okay. that life has been really hard for a lot of people. And I'm thinking about Centro del Pueblo, working with people who have some of the least resources through this pandemic. And I know that sometimes when someone says, well, did you think of doing this? Or did you think of doing that? And they're powerful, valuable things to do. A person like people like Brenda and Karen might just feel exhausted hearing it. It's not to say those things. I just want to acknowledge that you guys have been working really, really hard. And you probably need people to know how hard you've been working. I'm not sure what else to say, but I know you've been working really hard and I appreciate what you've been doing.
I totally agree with you, Peggy. And that's why I think it's so important for them to have support from the community. To the extent people need to be aware of the problems before they'll come in and support. And so to the extent that there can be letters to the editor or, you know, stuff on Facebook or wherever it's appropriate to have it, you have to get the word out and make people aware of the need. And then maybe it will, I mean, to the, you know, two people can't do all this. It takes a village, right?
Yeah. And
so
I didn't
need to wake up the village.
I just wanted to add to what you said rather than any kind of canceling or anything.
No, I know.
And I haven't seen you in a long time.
It's been a long time. I haven't seen you either. What's happened with your little piece of property over here?
That's another thing.
I see Brenda has her hand raised.
Who does?
Brenda?
Yes, this is where you are important. I hear, yeah, we are exhausted as naturally, you must imagine. We are not two, we are 4 and a little one of 5 months, so 4 and a 5-month baby. This is our team and our communities. But what I wanna tell you is that we are not, we want you to engage with us to be our strong allies. While we are working in the field work, we want you to use your influence that is high. Your influence is giant compared to ours in terms of federal laws or writing to the editorial, to the newspapers. I cannot tell you how many pieces of or articles, proposals we have sent and they haven't been published. So this is not like we don't try. We try, but for us it's double hard or triple. So this is where I want to hear. This is the moment where I really want to hear from you. If you will be able to support with that, with sending letters, with being more active, with erase the division of races and say, yeah, this is my community. And this is where I can help, like, this is what I can do to help, to just maybe provide or help Karen and Brenda to have how can I say it? Like not a harder, heavy weight in their shoulders, right? So don't feel that you cannot do anything. Feel that you can do it with us. And this is an open invitation. I see 24 people here. If you would engage to write one letter, I don't know, every month, we could have 2 years letters, or even that is not a lot to do. If you will have the time, and after you hear from us this information, maybe you wanna write a letter and send it to the newspapers or send it to your Congress representative. Think about the local next elections. My goodness, we have a district attorney that can change the face of justice here. We can have an auditor controller that keeps pointing at things. We can have candidates that really represent us. And but we cannot do it without you. This is where you are part of this with us. You are part of Centro. Please, thank you.
Well, we thank you ever so much for proposing to update us on what's going on and the issues and the questions that you have and the needs you have. And hope you'll come back and give us an update at some point so we can see how things have evolved. Any other questions? Maureen, did you want to say something?
Just want to, I'm big fans of Centro and Brenda and Karen, and I'm so glad they made this presentation and that they can feel the support of all of us in attendance today. And they have done a remarkable job of reaching out. And so I just want to thank them for all the hard work they do.
Yeah, I mean, part of the idea behind this program at OLLI is to raise community issues and make us all aware of what's going on in our community so we can participate. So we are very happy to have you come and do that for us.
I have a comment.
Yeah,
Ellie, this is Ellie over here. Can you see me? I can only see
I can't
you.
see you, but we can hear you.
Okay. Hi, Brenda. Hi, Karen. I know that as an immigrant myself, I had to go through a lot of struggles to be where I am. And as part of OLLI, I will commit myself for during the fall, maybe create more of an awareness of the communities that we serve in our county. My paper that I did for my doctoral program is about Oaxaca, linguistic rights and human rights. And I would love to present that paper as one of the classes that I will offer through OLLI to create awareness and educate the community about not just looking at immigrants as people that come and they work very hard, but some people, they see them as taking from us, but actually they're not taking, because I haven't seen people that do the work that they do that local Native people would do in a way that is, you know, I never, just one example is I never seen a Latino with a sign asking for money at any corner, because they prefer to work hard no matter what they do in terms of working than begging at the corners. And that is an observation that I've had. So they come to work because there's a lot of the rural communities in Mexico, they are not providing for their families. A lot of people from Oaxaca, they live in rural areas. They live off the land, and the land has not been able to provide for them. So therefore, the only way of surviving is to come to this country and just leave everything that they know in order for them to survive, just through basics, the basis of life support. So I think just educating the community would be a great way of contributing to what Brenda and Karen Paz Dominguez. I was at El Centro at the university the other day. I was very impressed what they're doing. They're really helping the students at the HSU, the Latino and the immigrant community that comes to the university. And also we are connecting with the college students. So when they transfer, they do not feel as lost as well. And they have the support of communities like them. And it's really hard, but I think what we need to do is contribute by educating the community and supporting the hard work that my colleagues are doing here in the community as well. So I'm gonna put a proposal to present my paper about Oaxaca so we can go ahead and learn more about that amazing community.
Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you, Ellie. And Elizabeth has her hand up and has for some time, I think. Would you unmute, please, Elizabeth?
Hi, I just wanted to say that I've been offering a program called Towards Citizenship to help people prepare for the citizenship exam. And I'd like the whole immigrant community to know that you don't have to get a lawyer unless you have some particularly complicated issue, but that you can study for the test. There are resources. I can help people find resources. I can help people study. So the money that you need is like $750 for the application. And then of course you need the money to go down to San Francisco and stay in a motel and come back from San Francisco. But it hurts my heart sometimes when I hear that people have been spending thousands of dollars for an immigration lawyer when there's so much, then yet somehow the word is not getting out. I guess because people are so afraid.
Thank you, Elizabeth. We have actually referred a couple of your flyers and posted them on our social media. Yes, so we've been working with you.
Thank you.
I think the issue is a lot of the times is we don't have a lot of immigration lawyers here in our area. And even when there is a lot of ambiguity as to who qualifies for this citizenship. And so even as we're going through these issues, that's definitely, I think the policy changes is something that we need to really focus on as to who qualifies for these things and the discrimination that happens once people do qualify. As you'll see, a lot of individuals, I have, people told me my family we're immigrants in our families, and my partner's family is immigrants from Scotland. And I've had my partner's family tell me my immigration process was not as difficult. And so there's clearly a discrimination that is going on between who's coming to this country and who we're receiving. And so there's definitely, there's a lot that we need to change. And I'm really happy to be able to see people here who are willing to make this work and who have a lot of, like Brenda said, influence in the community. I did want to ask a couple questions. I know we're like kind of running out of time. I don't know if
No, you've got time. You've got time.
Okay, perfect. Just in the whole faith of like, we're all learning about this stuff and pretending we're in a classroom. I wanted to ask a couple questions to all of you and see what you all thought. My first question is, do you consider yourself an immigrant? And if you want to put a little thumbs up on your Zoom screen, then we'll kind of take a little poll out here.
I do.
Yeah, I guess.
We all are.
Yes, a lot of caution, right? And so that's something that we're really big on, is we all are immigrants to this country. None of us are native to this space, and we're all guests to this land. Previous to this whole presentation, there was a land acknowledgement. Even though we as immigrants from Mexico area, we are indigenous and we call each other Southern Indigenous. We're still guests to this space. And so I just want everybody to kind of take a look around and really think about where your ancestors are coming from, because we're all essentially immigrants to this country. Thank you.
Yeah.
The next question is, what are some barriers that affect our immigrant population that do not our general public? And so this is based on the presentation, and I wanted to see if there's anybody here who feels confident and feels like they learned, and they want to kind of say a little bit of what they learned.
You didn't tell us that there was going to be a quiz at the end.
We have some rewards for those that raise their hand first.
I can speak for myself. One of the first barriers, of course, was language barrier, because I came when I was fresh out of high school from Chile, and it was very difficult. And I was at a community college learning English second language for about 3-4 years, and then I started taking classes. So altogether, it took me about 8 years by learning the language from scratch, to learning academically, to taking courses, to earn my AA. And then when I was ready, I had more units than I needed. So my next step was coming to Humboldt State University, Cal Poly now, Humboldt State. And I took I did my bachelor degree in 2 years and my master's in 1 year at Humboldt State University. It was not easy, but and once I moved to Santa Rosa, I was able to earn half of my scholarship to get my doctoral program at USF. But the biggest barrier was not only the culture, adapting to the culture, but language. You have to not just learn the language orally, but in order for you to move forward, you have to learn it academically, which is, learning from books and learning from research, and et cetera, et cetera. It was not easy, but that was, in my personal case, was language barrier.
Thank
I
you.
want to add something else about citizenship. Sorry, I just remembered it. Catholic Charities of Santa Rosa
Yes.
is coming up here, this coming weekend, I believe, and they're offering training to people who are interested in learning how to help people fill out the application for citizenship.
Well,
So-
I'm going to do that.
Those of you who are allies here, and I'm sorry I don't have the ability to put that information up on the screen.
So how do we know more about it, Elizabeth?
Yeah, how do we know more about it? Let me look it up on my phone.
If you all
Okay.
follow us on Instagram or Facebook as well, we have that information. We're currently working with them. I can put up the flyer up on the chat. And then as with that as well, Centro del Pueblo, a couple of our organizers are celebrating El Día del Niño, del Día del Niñe. And so we're hoping to be able to have people who want to donate any toys for children. April 30th, April 29th to April 30th is when Santa Rosa Catholic Charities is coming. And so if you all want to donate, I'll put the posters in the chat as well.
Okay, sounds good. The Day of the Child, that's what El Día del Niño is. I don't think you translated that.
Sorry, yes, it's all for children. We're donating toys for children. They get toys, they get celebrated on the 30th. And so
Okay.
that's that. And I've just put that in the chat, and Brenda just put in the information for the event that's happening with Catholic Charities. Our next question.
I think I will address this one a little bit. The last one here. There are cultural barriers. You have to understand how the
Mhm.
system works. You have to
Yes.
understand where to go to help, who to talk to for what, where to get healthcare, where to get vaccines, the whole range of things that are cultural
Yes.
or civic. What are your rights? How do you find out what your rights are when you're undocumented? Who can you go to for help? I mean, there's a whole range of cultural things that you need to understand about the society, and we don't really have a system for letting people know about that.
Right.
Thank you, Jane. That was a great answer too. Len, did you want to add something?
To the last question, I was driving home yesterday from Santa Rosa and I'd forgotten my wallet, so I didn't have a driver's license, but I wasn't afraid of being stopped and being hassled or something horrible happening to me. And so that's a privilege that I have everywhere I go. So I can walk in stores, I can do all sorts of things. And I
Nice
don't
privilege.
have to be afraid. So that's definitely a barrier I don't have to face. And I think that's something we forget about. We take it for granted a lot of the times.
Thank you, Len. That's a really great example. I see Jenny, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I wanted to respond on a number of levels. I am an immigrant, definitely, but guess what? I didn't have anything like you guys have had. Like Len said, it wasn't so difficult, although the language was a difficulty, but I have prejudice going in the other direction. You know, of course, that I could immediately be working as a chief assistant to somebody because I've got the accent. Excuse me, I can't type, as back in the day. That's sort of neither here nor there. But I did also want to say that when you were asking about learnings, my knowledge of what Southern Indigenous meant, the term, was complete. I'm delighted to be learning what I'm learning now about the particular population we're talking about, but I did not know what Southern Indigenous was and was rather surprised not to find any Native American discussion. So if we're talking about being lack of knowledge, that's one very basic thing. I mean, you don't need to be using the term, but if you're going to use it, you better be sure that you identify. I don't mean you'd better be sure. But what I'm saying is I certainly learned a huge amount and am most appreciative of everything I've learned here and surprised. I just didn't get it. So thank you.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's great to hear. I love to hear those words. I'm appreciative of what I'm learning here and that you're here learning. It's perfect. Peggy, did you have something you wanted to say to this question?
As I was listening, I was thinking about a friend that I had years ago in Reading who had come over from Indonesia. And my experience and his experience were so very different. And hearing him tell me that he would stand on a corner and people would drive by and shout at him and tell him to go home. And I think that happens to anyone who has brown skin or anyway, that's a barrier that I don't have to experience.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody's comments and I can tell that everybody learned and definitely if you all come to Centro del Pueblo, we got some nice prizes for all of you. The next question is, what is the highest Southern Indigenous families coming from? The population, where are they coming from? And that's something that I mentioned, but I wanted to see, and it was mentioned again in the answers.
You mean geographically? For example, segments of Mexico, or what are you talking about?
Oaxaca?
Yes, thank you, Peggy. Oaxaca, Mexico is where we have a lot of our people coming out here. I know Brenda's like, super, we're all learning out here. Great answer.
And that's what Karen, that's what my paper was all about. And I'll be more than happy to do that. And there's even a movie, Flowers of, I forgot. There's a big documentary about Oaxaca that I used to use in one of my classes at SSU. Blossoms of Fire, I think it's called. And it's an amazing documentary about what Oaxaca is all about.
Definitely put the name in the chat. I'd love to see it too.
Okay.
And it'd be great. I'd love to even just listen to you and the research that you've been doing. I think it sounds super great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Why is it important to revitalize our Native cultures? And so this is like to the extent of everyone.
Because if we would have listened to them, to our Native ancestors, I think we wouldn't be in the mess ecologically, mess and environmental mess that we find ourselves today.
I'll second that.
Yeah. Thank you, Jane.
They're finally learning about fire, right?
Right, exactly.
Only took 100 years or so. We don't want to rush it.
That's right.
Kate said Indigenous knowledge will lead us to the climate crisis. Will lead us in the climate crisis. Yes.
And alternative points of view in terms of thinking about justice systems, about discrimination, about values. There's so many, the different cultures are very rich in different ways from the Western one that we've promulgated for the most part all over the United States. And it's useful to have contrast to that and need to look at that, and helps us value or reevaluate our own.
I love it. Yes. And then Peggy said all of our lives will become richer. And I think apart from richness, there is also coming into this space where there is a big push towards indoctrination of the dominant culture, right? There is a lot of assimilation that is being pushed upon us. It is, yes. I mean, I think that once being here, you can't just like stay tied to your culture without being exposed to another one. We're gonna learn the American culture, but I think a lot of it is we are being taken away from our roots. And so this creates a big identity crisis in a lot of us as well. I know one of the biggest issues right now within education is even just thinking about language issues, right? That Ellie mentioned before. We're really pushing towards people having multiple languages, and it's a really good thing for everybody to have. We're all knowingly that bilingualism is great, multilingualism, like it's amazing, right? We all want to have it. We all want to learn new languages, but the people that are coming here with a native language, such as Spanish, such as Mixteco, such as Zapoteco, we're forcing them to stay away from their language by creating systems in education that take away these languages. And when it's somebody who is brown coming in from Mexico, they're forced to learn English, and there's suddenly this big concern for them not learning English fast enough. Whereas there is plenty of studies out there that show that being able to work with two languages, you'll eventually kind of catch up. Even if you're behind on one, knowing two languages will help you learn things in the later on, right? And so being able to push bilingualism in schools such as in Fortuna, right, where there's a big Latinx population, Southern Indigenous population there, whereas we have, looking at where our bilingual classes are truly at, we have them here at Fuente Nueva, we have them at different areas here in Arcata, and looking at our Southern Indigenous Latinx population there, we really need to strategize and find ways to make sure that the people that truly already have their language don't lose it. Because there's a big disconnect between our community and our parents with their first generation students who are coming in here and are being in this space. Brenda, did you want to add anything to that?
Gracias, Karen. And a simple way for me to say it is when we revitalize languages, dances, food, people is happier. And that is so fantastic to see. When I see people growing the corn and the seeds that they've been having or speaking in Mixteco in the gardens, there is this level of freedom and happiness that for so many years has been denied. It's just fantastic. So I will say, for so many time, for vulnerable communities, revitalize our culture, it's vital. It is that source. We have to forget about struggling. We are there, we are thriving. We are not surviving, we are thriving. Pass.
Right.
Brenda, does anybody want to add anything else to that question?
Am I on? I think I'm muted. Hi,
Yes,
I'm Sharon.
you're on.
I just wanted to ask, food is such a big part of bringing people together.
Yeah.
I was just thinking some simple things we might do, like cooking classes, or maybe an evening at a community center where everybody brings their favorite favorite dish or something, and then just talk, because I think food has a way of breaking down barriers, and besides, it's wonderful. So just wanted to throw that out.
It's very true, Sharon. You hit it on right on. I taught elementary teachers for a long time at SSU, multicultural pedagogy.
Yes.
To TK all the way through 6th grade, and I always had food in my classroom, and it was a time that the students would get to know each other, and the barriers and the iceberg would be melted by the end of the first month, and the students were able to have dialogues to talk about issues that can be very controversial, about all the isms in our society. And we were able to prepare the teachers to be aware of all the isms that they will face as teachers out in the communities that they will serve. So learning about their communities that they were going to serve was very key to be a successful multicultural teacher.
Right, right.
You know, there's a program for HSU Cal Poly Humboldt, I presume it's continuing through Equity Arcata as well, where we have the Home Away from Home program for students in the community.
Oh, really?
Perhaps you could create something comparable for various cultures,
Okay.
including your own.
Yeah, I'd like that.
It'd be great because everybody does come for the food and then for the conversation.
Especially students, yeah, where's free food?
Yeah.
They're always hungry. Yeah. No matter what, even if they bring food, they're always hungry. They always want to eat. So
Right.
that was key thing. And we took turns and bring in all different, learn about other cultures, and we would bring food about the culture and talk about the culture. It was awesome.
Yeah.
I love the connections that are happening here. And I think one thing that I just wanted to add is one of the things that we've been doing is within our community, we've been revitalizing the dance of the Flor de Piña, which is a harvest dance that is only danced by women in Oaxaca. And so we presented that at our festival of Festival de Migraciones, Migrations Festival at the Clark Museum last year around the time of November. I think it was like November 6th or something. And my family comes from Guerrero, Mexico. So I wasn't familiar with the Oaxacan dance, but I danced it anyways. And after the presentation, one of our community leaders came up to me, and she was crying at the time. She was very moved and very happy to be able to see a dance that she grew up with, and she danced when she was younger, be presented in a space that was so open to everybody, and just being available and having that space. And so now she's invited us to dance at her daughter's wedding. That's going to be a traditional Oaxacan wedding, and we're really stoked about that.
I love it. Love it.
So in July in Oaxaca, when I was doing my studies, I actually lived with among the Zapotecs in Oaxaca. And in July, they have this big festival, which is called La Guelaguetza, where all the communities, and over 16, maybe more communities in Oaxaca that are so unique from each other. Even their languages are unique, and they do not communicate with each other unless they know the language or they know Spanish as the language that unites them. And it's amazing. And they have the dances, they bring food from their areas, and it's a big festival. It's called La Guelaguetza in July. And I think Santa Rosa does it because they have a big community of people from Oaxaca as well.
Yeah, definitely. And did you want to add something?
Yeah, in terms of your last question, I think as a white man, it's too easy for me to say, oh, these things are good because I benefit. And really, it's not about me benefiting. It's about other people benefiting. And I think that's really important because much of the time we try to figure out, how does it benefit me? And from my perspective, that's totally irrelevant.
Thank you, Len. That's a really great point. I appreciate you bringing that up. Definitely.
And I think we need to talk about how some of these things benefit the community overall.
Exactly.
And one of the things you could look at is how you can coordinate, maybe adding some of these festivals on the plaza or down in Eureka at Arts Alive.
Yeah.
I mean, you can coordinate with some of these public events because people are always looking for new entertainment, frankly. And if you can coordinate and become part of some of these events, that'd be fantastic. Give you visibility. Go down to the farmer's market and
Yeah.
have music there, have musicians there, do dancing there.
Mhm.
I appreciate that. Brenda wants to say something. I was just gonna invite you all to our Jardín Santuario, which is on F and 11th, and come in. We have a garden there. It's a great space, and we have a lot of this stuff accessible to the community. We have corn, we have things like epazote and different plants growing in there. Pero Brenda, te voy a dejar que.
Right.
Yeah, it's a lot neater. I went by it yesterday and, oh, it's much better, better maintained than it used to be. So you're doing a great job.
Where is it located? Where is it?
On the corner of F and 11th in Arcata.
Oh, in Arcata. Okay.
Yeah. It used to be open door garden. And then
Okay.
before that, it was
Because I know we are taking more time than we were programmed, and I'm happy that you're here. We can keep here.
You're
So-
allowed to go until 1:30. Don't be shy.
All right. So something
what was
about sorry, something about what Len said just made me think how being
baby.
conscious of what we need sometimes is just to feel in a safe space. And what does that mean? Sometimes it doesn't mean that how can I say it? Maybe in Spanish and Karen can translate because sometimes, emotions get through. But what I want to say is that maybe a good alliance, and if please don't take me wrong, but sometimes a good alliance is just to make sure that we are in a good space, and we may not have your presence, but if you send the letters, if you talk to others, if you even say hi, that's the level of consciousness. I mean, some people come to us and says, hey, I loved your dances. You want to come dance for us? And no, we don't like to be like the exhibit pieces,
Right,
we don't like that level of we don't, it's not, I mean, here we are with the pieces of English. It's not that we reserve that for us, but it's been so long the time that we haven't been able to do it, that we want to enjoy among ourselves. And then what you can do really is to provide that safe space, to be conscious, to maybe just do a step back, just for a second, or just for a minute, or think twice before the action and says, okay, how are they going to feel? Am I doing something for them, or this is for me and for myself and for my feelings of fulfillment? So just put yourself in our shoes. This is what we always try to do, and listen to us. More important. Thank you. Pass.
Great.
Gracias, Brenda. And I think, yes, and I think what Brenda's also trying to say is for a long time, we've been negated the space. The whole reason why, there's big populations of Southern Indigenous and Latinx folks out here, but you don't see us out at the farmer's market. You don't see us out in like college spaces as much unless, they're children of immigrants who are coming into the space, but a lot of the times this is because there is a big fear of if you're being publicized, you are then being exposed. There has been, and Brenda mentioned this previously in the presentation, but there has been a big history of raids in this area, right? Of ICE coming into this area and really just going on and doing as they please. Brenda was part of a really big campaign that brought in the sanctuary law to protect our families, to make sure that our families were not being just taken out in the middle of the night, right? Or being picked up as they're picking up their children from school. Growing up with a family in which my family are immigrants, it is really difficult to grow up in that fear where you have a plan B in case your mom doesn't pick you up from school, in case you don't get picked up from tennis practice, or you don't know if you're going to be able to see your family again. And so a lot of it is we have been really cautious, and so being able to bring in these things from our culture, revitalizing things that have not been brought up from previous spaces is a lot. And so for us to be able to do it in publicly takes a lot of courage. A lot of families, when you see people in the front pages, when you see people up in different festivals and they're dancing or they're doing what they need to do, they're exposing themselves, right? And so that's a really big thing that's going on. And, you know, unconsciously, I think we forget about it. But it takes a lot of courage for a lot of our families to really go be out there and be exposing and really putting themselves in danger to be able to bring in their culture and to show what they have. And so I think that's also part of the reason why our dance, we do come in and do it at festivals. You'll see it and we'll announce it. Follow us on Facebook. Please come in and come watch us. We'll enjoy the claps, and sometimes we'll have tamales, we'll have food and stuff. But a lot of it, just be reminded of that the people who are doing the dance have a lot of courage to be able to expose themselves into the situation. And so with that, I have our last question. And we made it all in perfect time. What is the importance of our allies in the fight towards equity? And I think you have all answered this in some way or another, but I don't know if you all wanted to bring that more specifically.
You need them.
Yeah.
We need you.
And this is important to be able to do this kind of presentation to this group.
Yes.
Because most of us in this age group grew up in a different society in a different time where this issue wasn't possibly, I mean, it was an issue with a different cultural group, all right, perhaps, but not from Mexico. So, and California, I think people forget about California history and the missions and the fact that the Spanish were here. And they owned huge tracts of land, and they still do in some places. So I mean, it's an interesting history, and many people just aren't aware of it. Are there any other questions? Any other comments anybody has?
I think Peggy has her hand up.
Peggy, unmute.
I'd like to do my best to, you know, you invited us to show we were learning by answering some questions and speaking up. And I would like to do my best to show that I heard Brenda. Karen talked about the risk of being out in public and showing that you are an immigrant by showing your culture. And Brenda wanted us to hear, I think, I'm going to do my best to understand that people don't need to be put on display. It's a tradition and a culture that is really important for the people who come from that culture to be able to experience it and be within it and live within it and celebrate within it. So I hope that I picked up more, and Len expressed it too when he said, what's relevant is how does it benefit the population we're talking about.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Karen and Brenda, what you can do to help, fantastic. Yeah. But I want to thank you all for participating. I think it was a great idea to have questions at the end like this, Karen. It gave us all an opportunity to participate and to think about the messages you were trying to communicate and make us all, maybe reconsider a little bit about how we think about this. And we hope you'll come back again so we can talk about this further in the future. Meantime, thank you ever so much. This has been wonderful for everybody, I think. And I want to make you aware that next Monday on April 25th, we're going to have a presentation on Alzheimer's awareness with Lynn McKenna and Kim Coelho of the Alzheimer's Association, and topics covered include the warning signs and stages of Alzheimer's resources and support, clinical trials, and how donations can help find a cure. more about the local walk for Alzheimer's and how to become involved. Education is key to bringing awareness about Alzheimer's into efforts to help those suffering from this disease, which is becoming, I think, third leading cause of death among the elderly.
That's right.
A big problem. Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you, everyone. Good
Great
meeting.
job.
Thank you.